Let's learn Python by using Scratch. We know how to use control blocks in Scratch. We've got repeat and forever, which are loops, and we've also got if then and if then else. These are conditionals. We know about loops. We can even loop a playlist in YouTube. But why conditionals? Well, in if statements, when we have the if then block, there's a space that we put the condition to check if it's true or false. So that if statement needs that condition. So that's why they're called conditionals. Conditional statements or conditional expressions. When we look at Scratch coding and Python coding, there is something you need to know. In Scratch, we put blocks inside an if block. In Python, we use something called indentation, which is like a space. So if we look at our Scratch blocks, you can see we use the if then, and inside that block we have the blocks that we want if that's true. In Python, you can see we have our if statement and we have our code, and the code after the if statement, because we don't have a block to put it in, we have this space, this indentation. So you can see here the print hello is moved over from the other code. So inside the if statement we have this space, and also in the if-else statement you can see here we've written code here, but the space tells us what's inside that block. In Scratch and in Python we use that space. In this video, when we go from Scratch to Python, we're going to show you some things that are the same, but also there's some new things and some things that are different. So we're going to start off simple and be clear. So we start off building on what we already know. So let's start with Scratch. We know what control blocks are, but what are conditionals? Let's have a look in Scratch. So we started off with the say block, which we know means print, and we looked at operators like plus, minus, multiply and divide, and also our variables. We can set a variable and give it a name. So our control blocks are repeat and forever, which are loops, and if then and if then else blocks. Now these are our conditionals, and the reason why they're called conditional statements or conditional expressions or simply if statements is we have the if first of all, and then we have this space here which is the condition. Now if that condition is true, then we complete the blocks inside the if statement. So let's show you what I mean. So here's a block with say condition is true for 2 seconds. Now if we set x to 5 and we ask is x less than 10, then that condition x is less than 10 is true. So it will do what the block does, what the block asks. So we run that and it says condition is true. Now if that condition was false, so is x greater than 10, which it's not, it won't do anything. So we run that and there's nothing there. So similarly, we can have our if-else block. We've got our condition, and if it's true, it will run the block inside the if part, and if it's false it will run the block in part of the else side. So let's run this. It says the condition is false. So here x is not greater than 10, so it says think condition is false. If we change that so the condition is true, so x is less than 10, when we run that it will say condition is true. So with this conditional statement or if statement, if this part, which is the condition, is true, we run this part inside the if statement. If it's false, we run the part that's in the else part, the block that's in the else part if it's false. So that's conditionals. Let's look at our if statement in Python. So we started off with a variable x equaling 5. So we can just type x equals 5. Now our if statement, we had our condition. So for example, we had if x is less than 10. Remember that colon. Now with our gap, we're going to print something. So we leave a space, an indentation, before we start our print statement, and then for example we can print hello. So x equals 5, which is less than 10, so it should print hello. When we run that, there we go, it does print hello. Let's explain what you can use to write your code. Here's our if statement inside Notepad, which is just a text editor. Now we use the IDLE in the first video because it's very easy to use. We could just type each instruction, each line, and then run the code, and that's quite simple to use. It's not great if you want to write many lines of code. So for example, here we've got our code in Notepad. We're going to copy that and paste it into the IDLE, and you'll see what happens. It says there's an error message. So we want to use an editor, we want to use something to write our code. Notepad is okay, it's pretty basic. So when we use Notepad, we save the file as .py. We can run that in a command prompt, and when we run that, it prints hello. To run our program, we can drag the file into a command prompt and then press return, and that will run the file, and in this case it will print hello. You can see there, I just drag the icon of the file into the command prompt. Once it's in there, you can press the up key to run it again. Here's Notepad++. Here you can see our code has different colours. So the colours can tell us which words are Python words, which are numbers in red. The slightly grey text is a string, and we can see x is a variable. So Notepad++ is a bit better than Notepad. Here's Spider. So this is an editor with our code on the left hand side, also using colours to help us, and then we can run that and we can see our output in the right hand side window. If you're serious about learning Python, I suggest you use some type of editor. Notepad++ is quite simple, or you may prefer another editor like we use Spider. We can go back to our code, and we used an if statement to print hello. Now we can change our if statement to include else. So now we have an if-else statement. So here we had print hello, and if it's not true, we want it to print something else. So maybe something like goodbye. Okay, so let's run this. and as before it prints hello because the condition is true. So let's just change our code to say if x is greater than 10. So now the condition is not true, so it should print goodbye. Let's run this and it does print goodbye. So if the condition is true, it completes the code that's in the if part. If it's not true, it completes the code is in the else part. So this is identical to Scratch. Let's have a look at our Scratch blocks again. Here we've got set x to 5 and 5 is less than 10, so when this runs it says the condition is true. If we were to change that to 5 for example, x is not less than 5, so it says condition is false. In Scratch we've got less than and we've got greater than, but we haven't got less than or equal to. So there is a difference between Scratch and Python. In Scratch we've got less than and greater than, but we haven't got less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. If you want to do it in Scratch, you could use or and then have something like x is less than 5 or x would equal 5. So if we try that, let's run this now. You can see the condition is true because that's true if it's less than 5, it's x is less than 5 or equal to 5. So in Scratch we have to use the or because there's a less than and equal to but not together. So in Python you put them together. So that's something that's slightly different. One thing that's very different is equal to. So here we've got set x to 5. If x equals 5, then if that's true, which it is, again we're going to have condition is true. So that uses simple equal sign. Let's have a look what happens in Python. Here's our Python code where x equals 5. If x is greater than 5, it's going to print hello. When we run that, it doesn't print anything because x is not greater than 5. Now something new in Python that's not in Scratch is greater than and equal to. So here we've just added this equal sign, so now if x is greater than or equal to 5, print hello. When we run that, it will print hello. We can change the greater than to less than, and when we run that it prints hello because it's equal to 5. So that's something new in Python that's different from Scratch. Now something that's completely different. X equals 5. Now if x equals 5, print hello. Seems straightforward. We run it and it says there's an error, a syntax error. It says it's wrong. So have a look at the code. We've put 2 equal signs. When we run the code, it prints hello. So x equals 5 means make the variable x have the value 5. But in a condition, in an if statement, if we want to say x is going to be the same as 5, we're going to compare them. So if x is the same as 5, print hello, then we use 2 equal signs, not 1. So when we run that, it will print hello. So that's completely different from what we're used to. In Scratch, we can use the term not and or. But in Python, we have this exclamation mark. So when we want to say if x is the same as 5, we use two equal signs. But the opposite, as in if x is not the same as 5, we can use this exclamation mark and equal. When we run that, it's not going to print anything. But if we make x equals something different, or we check to see if it's not 6 in this example, it will print hello. So we had equals and equals and exclamation mark and equals. Finally, we're going to have an example of where Python is the same as Scratch and where Python is different. There's something new. So here's an example. We've got x. If x is greater than 0, x is positive. It's a positive number. And if it's not, it's going to say it's negative. So if we run that, it's going to say it's positive. If we say -5, it's going to say it's negative. But these blocks, this code, is not correct, because if we put 0 in, well, 0 is not greater than 0, but it's not negative. So let's see how Scratch and Python are the same. So how would you get around this in Scratch? Well, what you could do is you can go back to the control and you can put another if block. So we can say if x equals 0, let's get our x, I think maybe we use an if-else block here. So we can say if x equals 0, we can think x is 0, but if it's not, x is negative. So let's run this. Let's try our numbers. 5, x is positive. Let's try -5, x is negative. But when x is 0, it says x is 0. So we have an if else and we have another if else. But the second one is inside the first one. So this is called a nested if statement. So we have an if inside another if block. So we can do that in both Scratch and Python. Let's have a look. So we have our Python code that's the same as our blocks in Scratch. We have if, else, and we have this nested if else inside. So we can try our code with a positive number, we can try it with 0, and we can try it with -1, a negative number. And the code is the same. We have this nested if else inside the else part. Don't forget the spaces, the indentation in Python. But this code is exactly the same in Scratch and Python. Now let's show you something different in Python. Here we've got the if and the else, but in the middle we've got elif, E-L-I-F. Can you see when we run that, if it's a negative number, it does the same thing. But when x equals 0, the elif acts the same as an if statement. So we've got an if, we've got an else at the end, what we're used to, but in between we can have an elif. In fact, we can have as many as we like. So instead of just having true or false, we can check to see if the condition is true many times over. So we could use this to choose A, B, C or D, for example. So there's some new things in Python, but can you see how you can use your knowledge of Scratch to help you understand these programming concepts that you need in Python. We covered quite a bit today, so thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. See you for the next video.